So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. I'm Sarah Pravato, and I'll be your host for today. And for those of you that don't know, Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants is all about bringing science, adventure, and conservation to classrooms across the world. And this week, we are having a week-long World Oceans Day celebration. And this is to lead up to World Ocean Day this Friday, the 8th. And to properly celebrate this mysterious and diverse ecosystem on our planet, we have 50 hangouts with ocean scientists and explorers to learn as much as we can about the ocean. And today, our special guest is Bethany Augliere. And Bethany's a marine biologist studying Atlantic bottlenose and Atlantic spotted dolphins. And Bethany has spent countless hours diving and observing the social structures of these species. And so before Bethany starts, I'll just remind everybody to keep their mics muted so we don't have any interference with cameras. And we'll have Bethany give her talk, and then at the end, we'll go to each classroom for questions. So for those of you joining live on YouTube, we have, there's a chat bar, and you can ask your questions there, and if we have time remaining, we can get to you as well. So without further ado, Bethany, take it away.
Okay, so let me just share my screen here so everybody can see the presentation. The entire screen.
Oh, look at her dog in the bed.
Oh, yeah. Look, get on the bed. Okay. Hi, guys. Right. I'm going to get started. I have lots of pictures for you, so I hope you like undersea animals. Can you see that? Okay, you guys can all see that, right? Okay, I'm going to get started. So, like our host said, I'm a marine biologist, and I'm also something called a conservation photographer. And what that is someone who uses photography as a tool to share stories about our environment and animals, so hopefully we can help them. And I also study dolphins. So I feel like my job, I'm really lucky because I've gotten to see some amazing wildlife. And I live right here in South Florida. And this is a big tiger shark cruising over my head, if you can see that. That's me in the water. And let's see what else. This is a hammerhead shark. This is a Hawksbill Sea Turtle that I got to see when I was snorkeling on a wreck in the Bahamas. Or a leatherback sea turtle. This is actually the world's largest sea turtle. Baby Manta Ray. Now this is just a baby. She's probably only 7 feet across from wingtip to wingtip, but when she's an adult, she'll be more than 23 feet wide. And here's a manatee swimming in a freshwater spring. An alligator, or a common snapping turtle in a lake in Maine. And then I also get to see things like lots of pretty sunsets because I spend so much time on the water. But if any of you think you want to be a marine biologist or study the ocean or take pictures, it's okay if you don't live by the ocean. I didn't either when I was growing up. You can see me here with my little brother, and we're ice skating on a lake in Virginia. But somehow I found my way to the ocean. So, like I said, I'm a marine biologist, but mostly I study dolphins. So this is me underwater with a couple dolphins, and you can see I've got a camera in my hand to film them. And one thing that's really important about being a marine biologist is being comfortable in the water, so being a really good swimmer, sometimes even being able to hold your breath underwater. This is me with another dolphin. This is one of my favorite wild dolphins that I'll tell you a little bit more about later, but we call him Lettuce, and he's a little male. And I can identify him because he has these, I don't know if you can see him, these 2 little notches kind of in front of his tail. So before I get started, I just want to make sure you guys might know this information because I bet you're all really smart and have learned a lot. But I want to make sure you know things about dolphins. So first off, dolphins are mammals, just like people. So that means they breathe air. It also means the moms nurse their young, so they actually give their milk underwater. So you can see this little calf is nursing from his mom in the picture on the left. They're also really intelligent with large brains, and they can make a lot of different sounds to communicate. Just like you and I, we can talk and say things to each other, so can dolphins. And they do that by making whistles out of the top of their head from their blowhole, which is also where they breathe. So they don't breathe out of their mouth like people do. They breathe from the top of their head. And they also don't make sounds from their mouth like people do. They make sounds from the top of their head. They also have this really cool ability called echolocation. It's like dolphin sonar. So you can see in the middle is a dolphin, and what they do is they send out waves from their head, and it'll go bounce on something in the water like a fish, and it can tell that dolphin the size of the fish and how far away it is. And then the dolphin picks back up those sound waves that bounce off the fish, and they can tell everything about it. And other animals do this too, like bats, and humans use it when we're in things like submarines. So there's just the dolphin. So the group I work with to actually study dolphins is called the Wild Dolphin Project. It was founded or started back in 1985 by Dr. Denise Herzing. So it's been around for 33 years. And when she started it, she wanted to learn about wild dolphins that were in, free swimming and weren't in tanks or in captivity. And one of her main goals was to study their behavior and their communication. So what they said to each other, how much they played, where they ate, where they slept. And eventually, she wants to try and figure out if dolphins have language, just like humans, which no one has been able to discover yet. And she's still working on that. So this is her right there with a couple of dolphins in the Bahamas. So like our host said, I study two dolphins. I study the Atlantic spotted dolphin. So this is one right here, and you can see he has lots of spots. This is a male that we call Achilles, and he's playing with some seaweed here. That's one of their favorite toys in the wild, is seaweed. They do play just like us. They're kind of like big kids. Then the other dolphin I study is the Atlantic bottlenose, and you see here they have no spots. They also have shorter noses. They're a lot bigger. I don't know if you can tell in the photo, but they're a lot bigger. They can get up to 10 feet, and spotted dolphins get up to about 6.5 feet. They're a little more slender as well. So those are the two dolphins that I study. Now we work in 2 islands in the Bahamas. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Florida, but this is Florida down here on the left, and you can cross, that's the Atlantic Ocean, the blue, and you'll see these 2 islands. And on each of the islands, there's a group of spotteds and a group of bottlenose that live there. And we study all those individuals. So on one island, there's about 100 spotteds. So we know them all by name. We know who's who. I can recognize them just like your teacher can recognize all of you in a classroom. And same with the bottlenose. So when we go over there to work, this is the boat that I live on. I've spent a lot of time on this boat. It holds about 12 people. And we live out at sea for months at a time so that we can find and study the dolphins. And the Bahamas is a really great place to work to study dolphins because it's clear water and it's warm. And it's usually pretty shallow water, and it's safe, which is a good thing. So we can see the dolphins really easily, and we can find them. So what do we actually study? What do we want to find out about these dolphins? There's lots of different things. So one thing, we want to identify individuals so we can track them over time, over those 33 years. So again, just like your teacher might know all of you by name and know how to recognize you, that's what we try and learn with the dolphins. We also track family lines. So we keep track of moms and grandmothers and dads and who has babies and who's related to who. We study communication. So those whistles I was telling you about, when they use different whistles or chirps or squawks, and their echolocation or their sonar. We want to understand why they use their sonar. Behavior, things like eating and playing and fighting, or when the calves get in trouble from their moms, just like you might get in trouble, or when the moms are teaching their babies how to hunt and find fish. We study all of that. Their habitat use, so what kind of water are they in? Is it deep? Is it shallow? Where is it? Is it over a sandy bottom or a reefy bottom or rock? And then social structure, so who hangs out with who? It's a lot. And how do we work? So I told you I lived on a boat. So basically we go out on that boat and we just look for dolphins, and we spend a lot of time looking. Sometimes we look for days, sometimes even weeks. It can get tiring and it's hot, but when we find dolphins, it's really great. You can see them here. These people are looking at the dolphins. So once we find them, then we get in the water with our underwater cameras and our underwater microphones called a hydrophone. And we get in the water and we photograph and film their behavior. And you can see how close they let us get to them. And we always let them come to us. We don't ever chase them or touch them. But we've known them for 30 years, which means they're really comfortable with us, and they'll continue doing their behavior, like eating and feeding right in front of us. Now, a lot of people think living on a boat in the Bahamas is always great and fun, and most of the time it is, but sometimes it can be boring when there's no dolphins and it's really hot. Here are some of our staff taking a break, trying to escape the heat. You can see in this picture down here, we're in some bad weather. Our captain is hauling the anchor in some rain. Sometimes we see things like water spouts. We have to outrun hurricanes and tropical storms. But luckily, our captains always keep us very safe because they know what they're doing. So I just want to tell you guys now a few things about what we've actually learned about these dolphins, since I've told you what we study and what it's like being out in the water. So one thing we've discovered is that spotted dolphins actually gain spots with age. Now, when they're young and just born, they're actually all gray. They have no spots. Then when they're about 4 years old, they start to get these little black spots. And they'll get more black spots until about 8 years old. And this is when they're considered juveniles. So they're kind of like your age. They're 4 to 8. They might be in elementary school if they were in school. Then they become a young adult at 9, and you see they start to get these white spots. And then eventually, when they're 15 or 16 years old, they're a full adult, and all their spots kind of start to merge into one coloration. And this is really cool because it means that if there's ever a new animal that comes into our group from somewhere else and we haven't tracked them, we can estimate their age. So imagine if you could estimate a person's age by counting their freckles. That's kind of what it's like. Now, one thing we've also been able to do is track dolphins and their calves over time. So Denise, the founder of the project, like I was telling you about, first found this dolphin back in 1985. She calls her Paint. Paint eventually had this dolphin named Burgundy. Burgundy grew up, Brush, this is Brush. Burgundy grew up and Brush grew up and eventually had Burgundy, which is right here. And then Burgundy grew up and had her calf, and we call him Bueno. And Bueno was born in 2016, so he's just a couple years old, and we've actually already seen him this summer. So he's still around. So Paint is the great-grandmother of Bueno, and we've been able to track that over time. We've also discovered things about some of the males. So these are 2 male dolphins. Denise first saw them in 1985, and they were adults already, so they were already at least 16 to 25 years old. We call them Romeo and Big Gash. And one thing we've discovered is that males form a best friend. It's called an alliance that lasts forever. So it would be like if you made a best friend and stayed friends for your entire life, which happens in people all the time. Dolphins do the same thing. And it helps them to have that best friend because it can help them find females. If they're trying to have babies, it can help them fight off other dolphins or find food. So it comes in handy. Now, those are some of the things about the dolphins. I also wanted to tell you, I told you I work as a photographer, as a conservation photographer specifically. And so what that means is that I go out and instead of being the scientist, I work with scientists to study their animals and then to share those stories with the world in magazines or in presentations, to help tell the story of these animals and the scientists. So one project I'm working on is a project about this kind of animal, which is called a manta ray. It's like a stingray or a flat shark. And this is actually a fish. And what's cool about manta rays is they have the largest brain relative to body size of any fish in the world. So scientists think that these animals are really, really smart. And it seems like they are if you ever get to swim with them. Now, some people can be scared of manta rays because they hear the word stingray and they think they're going to get stung, but manta rays can't actually sting you. They have no stingers. They're very gentle. You can see its eye here. It's got a little remora fish stuck onto it. These two lobes in front of its face. This is its mouth and its tail, and here's two wingtips. So the scientist that I'm working with right here, her name is Jessica Pate, and she comes from the Florida Manta Project, and she's swimming with a manta ray right here, and we call this manta ray Stevie Nicks. And nobody in South Florida has actually ever studied these mantas, and that's why she started the project. And one of the things she's finding out, which is really cool, is that all of the animals are babies. This is actually a baby manta ray or a young manta ray. And so she's finding that South Florida could be an important area for these young manta rays. It could be what's called critical habitat. Now, what she's also finding, it might be kind of hard to see, is that these mantas have threats, and nobody knew about them because nobody was studying them. So what happens a lot of times is they get stuck in fishing gear that's just floating in the ocean. So she's got, you can see this is a fishing line with a weight attached to her and a line right here. So she's documenting those threats. This is a manta called Ginger. And you can see she's got a fishing lure right here. And just like spotted dolphins, we can identify spotted dolphins by their spot patterns to help us recognize and learn them. You can recognize manta rays by their belly spots. So Ginger has these 4 big spots and then a little one right here. And that's how we know that's her. So this is one of her assistants, and she's actually cutting line off of Stevie Nicks, cutting fishing line. And hopefully this will work. I'm going to play this video for you. Don't worry, it's a happy ending, but this is the lead biologist, the scientist, and she's trying to cut line off of that manta I showed you, Stevie Nicks. So it has 3 fishing hooks attached to it. So hopefully you could all see that okay. So that was me filming, and you can see Jessica does get to cut the line off of her at the end, which is really great. Now, Jessica can do this because she understands manta rays really well and their behavior, but you wouldn't want to just try this if you saw an animal and didn't know anything about it. She's an expert, and so that helps. And the cool thing is, I don't know if you can tell in the video, the manta ray could swim away at any point, but for some reason, whatever reason, she lets Jessica cut the line from her and doesn't swim away. And then as soon as Jessica cut it, she swam off. And we've seen her a few times since this day, actually. So that's one of the things I try and do, is document these things that these animals are facing and show the threats, but also show the good things that scientists are doing to try and help them. Another one of my projects or little stories that I have done is on sea turtles. Now, a lot of sea turtles face threats because of humans. Things like buildings that have light that impact the hatchlings coming out of the water, or also plastic pollution, or things that can make them sick. So this is a loggerhead sea turtle. It has that big old head, and it was found stranded on the beach. So people brought it into this nonprofit called Loggerhead Marine Life Center, which rescues sea turtles and rehabilitates them to get them back out into the wild. So this animal is getting some medicine. Whoops, there's one picture missing. Huh. Okay, I thought I had another picture in here, but it must be missing. But anyway, the workers worked with this animal. They had to stitch her eye. She had to have a couple surgeries, but eventually this is them, and they're releasing her back into the wild. She's called Kraken. And they put this tag on her right there. I don't know if you can see it, so that they can actually track her now that she's out in the open ocean. And there's a way, if you guys are interested, to go to this site and you can actually track her and see where she is as well. And I think here she is. She's on the beach. So these are all people on the beach watching her. She makes her way to the ocean. Oh, here she is. It was just out of order. So this is the wildlife rehabilitator, and she's stitching Kraken's eye. So one thing you can see is there's a lot of different ways to be involved with animals and science and the ocean. You can be a scientist. You can also be someone that saves injured sea turtles, like a vet or a wildlife rehabilitator. You can also be a photographer, which is what I do. A lot of people are also writers. They write about the ocean. And you can also see you don't just have to be one of those things. Sometimes I'm all of these things, and sometimes I'm just one. And it can take a lot of different paths to get there. It doesn't have to go in order either. So I think one of the things that a lot of kids and people ask me is, what they can do to help wildlife, especially when you know that there's things out there that hurt them. And that one of the things you can do is try and not use plastic. So this is a plastic bag floating on the bottom of the seafloor. Now, there was one classroom I went and talked to in Northern Virginia, and after hearing about how bad plastic is, they actually decided in their school that when they had breakfast and lunch at school, they would not use plastic straws. They gave up plastic straws. So that's 50 less straws a day being put out into the world. You can also make sure your trash ends up in the trash. You don't throw it out your car window or on the sidewalk. If you recycle, that's even better. You can recycle your garbage. You can ask your parents to recycle. You can ask your parents when you're going shopping to use reusable bags and not plastic bags. Giving up balloons. A lot of balloons end up in the ocean, and they look like things like dolphins and sea turtles eat. Now, we always try and pick them up when we can, but if you can not want to use balloons at your birthday party, you can do something better and be even cooler, and you can tell people why you're not using them. And then this is just some trash wrapped around a coral. Again, it's just being mindful of where you put your trash and what you can use less of, less plastic. So I think that's actually it. I went through that a little faster than I was thinking. Let's see, I'm back here. Can you guys see me? Okay, and let's see. Now I guess I can open it back up to questions.
Sounds good. You can go to each classroom now. Awesome presentation. I love the message at the end about just being mindful about the little things you can do each day to help the ocean. Because it's just a matter of a bunch of single people doing little things that make a big difference.
Exactly. Just like the classroom that gave up straws. And like I said, 50 less straws a day in the world, which makes a difference,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what we'll do now is I will just go to each class and I'll introduce you guys, and then one person can come up and ask a question. So we'll go to Mrs. Castell's class coming out of Freehold, New Jersey. And if one of your students want to come up, Mrs. Castell, here we are. Your mic is now unmuted, and you guys can ask a question.
What is the most dangerous species in the ocean?
Sorry, say that again?
What is the most dangerous species in the ocean?
The most dangerous species in the ocean? Well, I would say a lot of things aren't actually dangerous. Are you scared of sharks?
No.
Okay, because sharks, aren't always so dangerous, even though people like to think they are. You saw that picture of one swimming right over me. Sometimes it's the small things that people don't realize can hurt you. Like I was out in the ocean and I got a cut on my foot, and then my cut got infected with bacteria. Bacteria are like microscopic, and I had to go to the hospital because of that cut. And that's the only thing that's ever really hurt me. I've swam into jellyfish. Sometimes jellyfish can sting you. There's really bad jellyfish in Australia, but if you wear protective coating, you know, they're not going to necessarily hurt you. I don't like to say things are dangerous.
Thank you.
All right, and then now we will go to Mrs. Dudley's class coming out of San Antonio, Texas. If someone wants to come up and ask a question.
Okay, now go.
You have the floor.
How deep does dolphins go?
Can you hear him?
Where am I looking?
Yeah, oops, I don't believe that we can hear you guys. Your mic might not be working properly. But if you guys want to ask your question in the chat bar, we can do that, and then I can just be the voice. Sorry about that. And while Miss Dudley's class is actually asking the question, we have Team DD. They said they have to leave at 11. So if you guys have a question, you guys will have the floor now, and we will go back to Miss Dudley's class right afterwards.
Okay, they need to be unmiked, right?
Yes, right now I think they're muted on their end. Oh no, unfortunately we can't hear you guys either. My
name is Jacob, and I have a question. Are dolphins afraid of sharks?
Are dolphins afraid of sharks? Is that what you asked?
Yes. Yes.
Most of the time, so sharks do attack dolphins. They sometimes eat baby dolphins, actually, but dolphins are really good at fighting against sharks, especially if they work together. So they might know that sharks are their predator, but they also know how to avoid them because they're smart. Sometimes I've actually seen dolphins, they'll use their sonar and buzz the sharks away. They kind of pester them and annoy them, and eventually the sharks leave. Most sharks aren't predators of dolphins, so they're not really a problem. It's just the really big ones like tiger sharks that are, but most aren't.
You okay, Ashley?
Thank you.
Happy, Ashley?
Good question.
Yeah, very good question.
All right, so we will go back to Miss Dudley's class now.
Sorry? Do you hear us now?
Hold on, I said.
There we go. Everything's working. Then, if you guys want to ask your question, you have the floor, Mrs. Dudley's class.
Do you hear us? Can you hear us?
Oh. There we go. Okay, we are still muted on your end.
Can you hear us?
Can't hear you guys.
Wait.
There is a chat bar that you guys can ask the question into.
I don't know how to get to the chat bar.
Oh no.
Okay, so
That's all right. We'll just go to another class and we will come back to you guys. Okay. So we will go to Mrs. Bendo's class.
I don't know how to.
If you guys want to ask your question, you're muted on your end. So if you want to unmute your mic and ask your question.
1 second.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, that was all me.
What's your favorite animal that's in the ocean that you have ever seen?
Oh my goodness, that's really hard. I love dolphins because I swim with them a lot and study them, and so I know a lot about them, and they're really fun and playful and smart.
No, I don't want to.
I love sea turtle. I love them all. You know, the animal that I really want to swim with that I haven't ever seen? That might be more interesting. I want to swim with a leopard seal. They live down in Antarctica, and I think that would be really cool to see. But my favorites are probably manta rays and dolphins.
Oh, good question, Ty.
Very good question.
Okay, and then we will go to Miss Julie Kuhn's class. Sorry, I don't have your actual last name here, but if you want to ask a question, your mic is unmuted.
Kayla. Hi, my name is Kayla. Okay, so I'm gonna ask a little bit about sea turtles. So, well, the leatherback sea turtles. Are they endangered?
Are leatherbacks endangered?
Yeah.
So I believe the way it works is there's leatherbacks that live in different parts of the ocean, and scientists break up those groups. So there's ones that live in like the Pacific Ocean, ones that live in the Atlantic Ocean, and I believe some are endangered. Some specific groups of leatherbacks in certain parts of the ocean are endangered, and others are threatened. The threatened is a level of endanger, but it's not quite as serious. And I think in the past, all leatherbacks were endangered, but now some are threatened. I might be able to figure out, but I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
What?
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and let's go back to Mrs. Dudley's class.
I'm still not able to do it.
Can you guys hear us? Any luck? Any luck? Good?
Oh, hear us.
They can hear us fine.
Yes. Put our hands up here. How?
All right, just so you guys can ask, I don't know if you guys are on mobile or something, that might be an issue, or you could even ask on YouTube. Let me see if that went down there.
Let's see. Can you see that? I can't see that.
Oh, it's like Morse code or something.
Sorry, let me just put something behind.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think the resolution's allowing us. Oh, how deep do dolphins go? We got it. Okay, great.
The dolphins that I study, where they live is about 20 to 40 feet. So that's most of the depth that they're going. Other species of dolphins can go much deeper, several hundred feet. And then whales, whales can go much deeper than that, 1,000 feet, a few thousand feet. I believe it's beaked whales. Beaked whales, they can go 9,000 feet. So it depends on the animal and where they live. So the dolphins I study live in shallow water, so they only need to go shallow. There's some dolphins that feed on deep things, like deep squid in the very bottom of the ocean where it's dark, and so they need to go deeper. But they can hold their breath on average about 2 to 3 minutes, spotted dolphins, maybe up to 8 if they had to, but mostly 2 minutes.
Only 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, I mean on average, because that's all they really need.
Little did I know. All right, so we will go to Miss.
You guys have great questions, by the way, keeping me on my toes.
Smart kids.
Yes.
So we go to Miss Esta's class. I will unmute your mic. I believe it might be muted on your end because I don't know if I have the control here.
All right, we're ready.
There we go.
What made you so interested in dolphins?
What made me interested in dolphins? That's also a great question. When I was a kid, I always loved animals, all animals. It wasn't just dolphins. And so when it came time to college, when I was applying to college, I picked studying animals as the thing I would study for my major. And I just looked for different experiences I could get along the way. And I kept finding myself finding things to do with dolphins. I think because they're social. I really love that they're social and they have families and they interact with each other and they communicate. They don't just, I really like sharks too. I think sharks are interesting, but most of the time sharks are just by themselves. Well, sometimes by themselves. So I like that they have these family groups and social structure. They make all kinds of different sounds and they're really interesting in that way. And there's lots of different kinds of dolphins and they live in different parts of the world and different environments. So there's lots of things to study. Yeah, I just found myself finding things to do with dolphins.
Thank you.
All right, so we are coming to the tail end of the talk. To give Christina, and by Christina I mean Bethany, a thank you, we'll unmute the mics, and why don't you guys give her a big round of applause and say thank you.
Thank you guys for having me.
Awesome.
It was really fun talking to you all. I hope you liked the pictures and learned some things. And if your teachers have social media, they can follow me on those social media, and you guys can keep up to date with my work and my photos. You can follow me and ask me questions there if you have more questions, or your teachers can ask the questions. Yeah, it was really great. You guys were a great audience, and you had great questions.
Thank you, everybody. So we'll just go off